The Media Center for Art Education and Technology, a service of the Monterey County Office of Education, along with the Herald Live, presents Prep Nation. Now to your hosts, Dave Kellogg and John Devine.
Welcome to Prep Nation. I'm Dave Kellogg alongside John Devine, who returns to us from the Big Apple this week for Week 7. So John, while you were gone, well, you had come back by then, but Alvarez is still undefeated, and now they roll into a key matchup against Christopher, which is coming off a loss last week to North Salinas. Is this Alvarez team for real?
Oh, I think so, and particularly, this is the one thing that the Equity League wanted to do when they decided to create this, the two divisions with the Gavilan and the Pacific, is to make it more balanced, and this has really benefited a program like Alvarez right now. They're 5-0. This program has never started 6-0 in their 17-year existence, and so there's a lot at stake for them this week.
And you've seen them since the very beginning, haven't you?
We did.
Not to date you, but...
No, it's true. Going way back, they did have a 9-win season back, I think, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and they did win a league title 10 years ago. But it's been a long road since then for Alvarez in terms of just their struggles even to get back to 500.
Have you heard what the buzz is like on campus?
Well, I think each week they're getting a little more, there's a little more interest at campus. I think the kids are starting to actually believe that this program is for real. Now, I'm not talking about the players, I'm talking about the kids on campus.
Right.
And they understand the magnitude of this game. Because Christopher was the team everybody pinpointed to win the Pacific Division. In fact, I was one of those ones that said that their stay in the Pacific would be short-lived until they got knocked off by North Salinas last week. That being said, I still think they're the team to watch in this league, and it is at Gilroy, so it's a little bit of advantage for them as well.
Alvarez has been playing fairly conservatively lately, and it seems like they're a team that doesn't beat themselves.
And their defense is actually what's really impressed me in terms of how they've played in the last two games, or at least in their two league games. They've held two opponents to just 8 points.
Wow, impressive. And their offense seems to, I want to quote Jim Harbaugh, they seem to be just a meat grinder on offense.
Well, they've got one running back, Cesar Ramirez, that runs hard, and then they've got Edric Gamble, the quarterback, who is like a running back. And, I mean, obviously he's dimensional. I call him kind of a Colin Kaepernick. He's a guy that can get out and run on a pistol-type offense. But they are balanced right now in terms of what they have. Edric's a little more quicker, elusive, where Cesar's more of a hard, punishing runner, and I think that's worked well for them.
Okay, well, let's hear what Coach David Bottom has to say about this year's squad.
All right, David, after an 0-10 season, did you honestly see 5-0 to start this year?
That's always the goal, that's the plan. I mean, it's been a great start for the school, a great start for the kids. With our schedule the way it was set up, we set the preseason up to help us for certain teams during league. So this was definitely part of the plan, but it's definitely turned out pretty well.
Yeah, starting off 5-0, that normally doesn't happen. Did the light just go on somewhere?
I think we've just had we've had time, and we've been able to make our adjustments from last year to this year. And the kids have been able to be with the coaches. We've had springtime, we've had summertime. And we've just been able to kind of take our progressions and build off it each year. And having the continuity with the kids, the team, the players, the parents, and all the support, even with the administration, we've been able to take the time that we've needed to install what we've needed to get to the point we're at right now.
Now, I remember being out here, I think the second day of practice back in August, and I watched you guys, 7, 8, maybe 9 times trying to get this one play down. Obviously, it's working now.
It's coming together, and I think during summer you got to see what we were doing. We were breaking things down to one portion, one part of each play, and taking that repetition. And I had a coach once tell me that the repetition is the first key to learning, and that's what we're working on, is just trying to get these guys to understand that it's not always about the variety, it's about the execution. And we've been able to take our offense and our defense and really pare it down to the basics and just get good at the fundamentals.
Sure, yeah. Other than the wins, and of course they make everything, and you can hear the atmosphere out here, a little more lively. What has pleased you the most?
I would say just the overall team continuity. And the progression each game. Each game we've set goals and taken little steps to try to get better, either on offense, defense, and special teams. And for example, last week we completed a couple good passes and throwing touchdowns, also ran the ball very well, and our defense is getting better every game.
Yeah.
We're getting better at not giving up big plays. We're getting good at executing our game plans, and we're just becoming more of a balanced team, which is what I'm really excited about.
You mentioned defense, and that's something that's got my attention, at least in 2 league games. You're giving up just 8 points, and you're coming off a shutout.
That's it's a big step for us. This, especially being able to do it on homecoming, was very nice. And that last team we played, Pajaro, is a great running team.
Sure.
Their running back number 8 is a very strong, powerful kid. So it was great to get that, and it's also nice to see that we're able to go from our first, second. We've had a few injuries and get some players in and not have too big of a drop off, which means as a team we're playing very well.
Now, a lot of us had Christopher projected to win the Pacific Division title. And watching film of them, what concerns you?
They're just a great team. They're not weak anywhere. They play the pass well. They're great on defense, offense. They're also, like us, they're very young. They have some great athletes. That middle linebacker, number 5, he's a junior.
Yeah.
He's a great player. And just overall, they're a great team. And that's the tough thing with this league. As you mentioned, they were picked to be first. Well, we could have a 4-way tie at the top of this league. Everybody can beat anybody. And that's kind of the fun thing about this league, too. It's so competitive. North High's fast. Even Watsonville just had a great game. All of our teams are playing very well right now.
Well, and I think that's what they wanted with this equity league, to have a competitive league.
Absolutely. All the scores are close. Everybody's playing everybody tight, which is great to see.
Yeah. Now, every game I look at kind of as a pop quiz, I like to call them. Is this game more of a midterm for you guys?
That's probably a good way to look at it. Our preseason was set up to play our league teams, and then some teams throw better, some teams run better. Christopher is just kind of a balanced team, so I think this is a great spot to kind of take a look at where we're at, especially with the 3 games we have in a row with Christopher, North Salinas, and Gilroy. That's a big run of teams right there that are very good.
Yeah. Now, I know you're at the halfway point of season, but does it seem a little different on campus now? Maybe people, the student body, buying into this program's for real?
There's a lot more positive talk and a lot more excitement. It was great to see everybody out at homecoming and people getting excited. There's a little bit of a buzz about the team, and I think we're going to get those fans out for the last couple home games.
Great. All right, David, thanks.
Thank you.
So, John, for Christopher, is this a must-win game, a survival game for them to stay in the hunt?
Well, I think so. I think 2 losses will be one too many in this league. I do think 1 loss could win the Pacific Division, but I don't think they can afford to lose 2 games, particularly the way North Salinas is playing right now, because they're playing exceptionally well as well.
Getting back to whether Alvarez is for real or not, I mean, say they drop this game, do they have the confidence to bounce back? They haven't played a schedule that's been ultra tough, although they have had some fairly competitive teams.
Yeah, I think the key for Alvarez was that first game against Gonzales. I know everybody's going to say Gonzales was winless, but they had to get a win. They were 0-10. They got that win, it built some confidence, and they came back with wins against Alisal and Hillsdale. And Hillsdale at the time was undefeated. So in my opinion, they have played some quality opponents. Now, if they fall this week, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think it's a snowball effect. I see this team winning at least 7-8 games this year.
So you think the kids have the character to bounce back from adversity?
I think they believe in what Coach Bottom is preaching right now. And maybe last year it was a little bit of, feeling each other out, figuring out if this was going to work or not. I mean, this program's been through a few coaches in the last 4 or 5 years, and again, hasn't had a winning season in 10 years. So I think it took a little bit of trust. I think even though they were 0-10 last year, I think they gained a little bit of that momentum, and it's carried over into this year.
Well, let's hear what Alvarez quarterback Edric Gamble had to say.
All right, Edric, so what's changed with this team in terms of attitude this year?
I think attitude this year for us was basically to focus as a team. Let's all gel together. Let's all get that chemistry going as a team. Last year was a lot different. There was a lot of one-on-one, and I want to be the star of the team. But this year, it's just family. We all know what we have to do. We're all going to do our jobs, and we have to have the correct attitude for it.
Can you describe practice this year versus practice last year at this time when you guys were winless instead of undefeated?
I think practice this year is a lot more focused. We're getting a lot more done. I think that as a team, we know what we got to do, so we're going to practice extra hard to get a win every week. So I think practice this year, we have a lot more focus.
I'm going to guess it's a lot more fun, too.
Yes, it's a lot more fun, actually.
You're undefeated, yeah. Was there one game this year that stands out where you maybe said to yourself, hey, you know what, we're pretty good?
I would have to say Hillsdale. Hillsdale, I think that we proved that we trust each other. We can get a win together. We can fight to the second half. I think that once we realized that we were down, that's when we all knew that we had to come together as a team as one to win.
And at the time they were undefeated, you were on the road and you had to come from behind. So that was a good point there, yeah. Watching film of Christopher, what problems do they present for you offensively?
I think just like Hillsdale, they have a similar offense, and Hillsdale created a lot of problems for us with a lot of deep passes and outside passes. So I think we have to focus on that as a team this week for Christopher.
It's been 11 years since Alvarez has had a winning season. What were you, 5?
I was 5 actually. It's been that long. So.
That's a long time. I know it's been one game at a time here at Alvarez, but this program has never started 6-0. Pressure?
I don't think so. I think we don't really focus on that. We just focus on every Friday night. There's a task at hand, and we just have to get that. We just have to focus and come out and win, basically.
Let me ask you this though: maybe it's good pressure because this program's never had to deal with that.
It could be. But we don't look at it that way. We look at it just every game, take it one by one.
Yeah. The fact that you are kind of in uncharted waters here at Alvarez, at least in the last 11, 12 years, maybe this team's a little oblivious to the pressure and we're just going to go out and play and let the chips fall?
I think that's exactly what it is.
See 5 touchdowns, 300 yards, 100 yards rushing this week?
Hopefully. Hopefully.
All right, Edric, thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on now to the Gablin division. Seaside and Salinas surprised me last week. I mean, I was one of those guys who jumped off the bandwagon once they had the loss to Sacred Heart Prep and Terra Nova, and then they had a more difficult time with Monte Vista Christian than I thought they should. And then they stunned me last week by beating Hollister.
Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised as much as them winning. I mean, this team is a talented team. We've been saying since the beginning of the year we thought they had the most talent in the area. And Terra Nova and Sacred Heart Prep were both undefeated in the non-league season, so they played 2 quality opponents from the Peninsula Athletic League. The Monte Vista game concerned me a little bit because they didn't play well in that game. They were down 3-0, but some of that is a tribute to Monte Vista, who does play good defense and does play well at their site. I thought this was a big win for Salinas, not just because they beat Hollister, but they beat them at home. They'd struggled over the last 5 meetings at home. They've lost to San Benito.
Including last year in the playoffs, right?
Last year in the playoffs as well. I mean, they've had some success in Hollister, but they've struggled at home. So I felt that was important for them.
What are the keys for them going into this game?
Well, they got to run the ball. And in Seaside's situation, they have not been able to stop the run all year. I mean, they've given up 5 running backs have rushed for over 100 yards against Seaside this year, and Seaside's 1-3 in those games.
Now, Seaside, they had a tough loss last week against Palma. Are they ready to bounce back, or are there more problems there than might appear on the surface?
Well, I think they have to bounce back if they want to be in this, title hunt right now. I mean, you can't afford to drop 2 games back with 3 games left in the season. I think Coach Ayala said it best when he told me, I don't know what I'm going to get with this team. Some days we look great and some days we look awful. He goes, I just can't get a feel for this team. And I think he's as baffled as anybody, and he's the head coach.
What about their running game? You've been talking about that a lot, their lack of.
I was going to say, there is no running game at Seaside. And it's been that way for a couple of years. I mean, they're a pass-happy team, and that's okay if you use the pass like a run, like the 49ers used to do in the early 80s when they dump it off for those 3 or 4 yard games. Well, that's just like a run. I'm not seeing that with Seaside. What I'm seeing is they're throwing the ball downfield, or Chris Evans is in trouble and he's got to scramble. Now, he's a threat running the ball. I mean, if you blitz him, he's going to take off and go downfield. So you got to be cautious on that. And plus, Seaside has a lot of quickness. Now,
does a loss here probably knock Seaside out of the title hunt? Does it knock them out of the playoff hunt?
No. In fact, I think 4 or 5 wins can get a Gablin Division team still in the postseason. So they've got time. But I think the big picture for Seaside is just getting back on track and trying to get a W here. And then in Salinas' case, they want to build on this and have some momentum.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Gablin games, the Monterey-San Benito game looks interesting to me, especially Monterey. I was impressed with them against Palma. We both saw them against Palma. And then San Benito coming off the loss, as we talked about.
Well, I look at this game as this is the first game all year that Monterey's played on grass.
Oh, okay.
And I do think it will make a difference a little bit. I mean, it's a softer facility, obviously. And when you're on grass and it gets a little cool in the evening, that dew sets in on the grass and it makes it for a damp facility. And Monterey relies a lot on their quickness, their speed with, Achille Jones. Get it right there. I mean, he's a very elusive, quick back in the open field. Now, will that affect his running a little bit?
Right, so it could be an advantage there for Hollister.
Well, and I think Monterey hasn't played a game in Hollister since 2001.
Wow, okay.
So, I mean, it's a different setting in Hollister when you go to watch a football game. It's like going back into time, like the 1960s or 70s. It's a great feeling, actually.
Wow. Now, what does San Benito need to do to get back on track?
Well, they're playing a lot like last year, where I think they lost 5 games last year, and they kind of limped into the playoffs and then got hot at the right time. They're kind of the same scenario. They can't seem to put together a run, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. So I think it's a situation where they're trying to find their identity still.
Coming up on Saturday over in the MTAL, one matchup that kind of intrigues me, it's Stevenson against Carmel. Stevenson, it's a battle of unbeatens, by gosh.
First time ever that these two teams have been undefeated at the midpoint in the season at the same time.
What are your impressions of Stevenson? I know we haven't had a chance to see him since the preseason, but...
Well, again, I think people are going to take a look at their schedule and say who have they played. When you look at Harbor and St. Francis Catholic and Greenfield, you're saying, well, they haven't really played anybody. But you know what? That's not their fault. They went out and won those games. You know, this is a team that's held Carmel to 7 points at halftime in last year's game before Carmel erupted and ended up winning the game. So they tend to play Carmel a little tougher than other teams in the MTAL.
So Carmel now coming off that big win against Gonzales, a game in which a lot of their starters didn't play a whole lot. Do you think they'll be a little rusty coming in?
No, I mean, and I think Coach Anderson did the right thing. He pulled them out midway through the second quarter when they were already up by 40 or something like that. I mean, Gonzales is struggling right now, and he was wise enough to see that. I don't think it affects them at all because of the way they practice. I mean, I think this team stays sharp during practice and into games. I think Carmel's a good team. We've been saying this all year. They're ranked number 1 for a reason. I mean, they have been battle tested. You know, they've beaten Palm and they've beaten North Salinas, and those are 2 teams that are in first place in their leagues right now.
Yeah. Any chance for an upset?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Stevenson will have some success maybe moving the ball, but I really see Carmel jumping out quickly, making sure that what happened last year doesn't repeat itself. You know, Stevenson runs the ball well with Drew Miller. I mean, he had 285 yards last week. I like the way Stevenson bounced back. They were down 14-0 last week, and they bounced back and ran off the last 34 points of the game. But, I mean, Carmel's just got so much offensive firepower. I mean, who do you stop? Holden Smith, the running back, Connor Martin, the quarterback. I mean, he's got 4 or 5 receivers with a dozen or more catches. And what we don't talk a lot about is Carmel's defense. It's probably the best defense Anderson's had there since in his tenure of 5 years.
Well, speaking of Carmel defense, everybody's talking about down the road in the shoe game, especially in the wake of PG still undefeated and with a huge win last week. What's your impression of the Breakers?
They're good. I mean, they're a legit team. I mean, they went out and pounded Monterey in the third game. Granted, that was Monterey's first game. I think the results might be a little closer if they played now, but Pacific Grove is impressive. Jake Speed might be the best player in MTL right now. He's extremely versatile as a receiver, and he can run the ball. And Luke Lowe, you know, a county record 8 touchdown passes last week against Soledad. He's just efficient right now throwing the ball. And again, one thing we don't talk a lot about is Pacific Grove's defense. Not only are they the highest scoring team in the county, but they've given up the least amount of points in the county.
Now, we talked about you don't feel like there would be an upset on Saturday. PG still has to play Stevenson. Could PG get caught looking ahead at some point here?
You know, I don't think so, although I am hearing already that both campuses talking already about this game, and it's 4 weeks away. I mean, I could see a hiccup here and there, but I don't think they're going to stumble enough to. I think both teams will be. No, I think both teams will be undefeated going in that game. And boy, Pacific Grove at night, it's going to be a wild crowd.
Yeah. So, John, this week we're taking a road trip with the TV crew. We're going down to King City, your old haunts.
You're going.
Yes. We, as in me and the MCATE team. We're going down to King City to see King City against Greenfield. What can we expect to see out of this game? I mean, Greenfield has yet to win a game this year. King City at 1-1 in league play, still a little bit of a mystery.
They are. You know, they've called this game the black and blue game.
Okay.
I mean, they appropriately, those 2 schools nicknamed it that. And, you know, it's a physical game. These are 2 rivals now because a lot of these kids obviously know each other, whether it be living essentially 8 miles apart in these 2 cities or in, you know, 7-on-7 drills and whatnot. You know, King City still is a playoff team, and what I mean by that is they're still in the playoff hunt. They'd have to run the table, most likely, to get that 2nd or 3rd spot out of the MTL, but it's still there for them. So they have a lot to play for, and I think Greenfield's playing for pride right now. I mean, I think that showed up last week against Stevenson. You know, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead and played well up until the second half, and they kind of wore down a little bit, and that's kind of been Greenfield's problem all year. They've got a lot of guys that go both ways, and I think that they just wear down.
So what's the atmosphere going to be like down there?
You know, I don't know.
Back in the day, what was it like?
Well, back in the day, it'd be nice crowds there, and I anticipate a good crowd for this game because, again, these are two schools. They're close in proximity. King City's got a little momentum going right now after beating Marina last week, and they've got two talented receivers in DeAndre Sharif and Dominic Rose. These are two of the better receivers in the MTAL. What they did last week is they were able to establish a running game, and I think opened up the passing game even that much more. And I think for Greenfield, this is kind of like a playoff game for them because they don't want to go 0-10. And what better way to, get a win in your biggest rival?
Right. Hey, speaking of King City, let's switch sports now. And King City's got a big volleyball game coming up, don't they?
They do, and it's down in King City, which makes it even more difficult for the opponent to be inside of Catalina. These teams have met earlier this year, and Catalina handled them pretty easily at Catalina. Since then, things have changed quite a lot. I mean, King City knocked off Carmel, and then Carmel knocked off Catalina.
Oh, that makes
so
it messy.
We're going into the second half with a three-way tie for first. The thing about King City, you talked about the atmosphere for a football game. The atmosphere for a volleyball game is unlike any other than maybe a Notre Dame Salinas game. I mean, they get a good crowd every game down there in South County to watch their Mustangs, who have made the playoffs 31 out of 32 years.
So it must be a tough place to win if you're a road team, huh?
I think it is. I mean, because I think if you're a kid who walks in and all of a sudden you see a full house, and it's a supportive group, but it's vocal, it's loud, and it's emotional. And I think that helps King City. And the other thing, teams on the peninsula do not like going to South County. I mean, I don't know why. They don't. I mean, is that
A long car ride.
Well, I did it my whole life, Yeah, we actually liked getting out of King City, but these people don't like going down there, and I think that wears on them a little bit too.
Wow, okay. Also in volleyball, we've got a couple of players who've come back from major knee injuries who've made big splashes or have really helped their teams.
Yeah, and well, speaking of Carmel, Carly Eggers bounced back just 2 weeks ago, and within 2 weeks she sets a career best with 29 kills in that Carmel win over Catalina, and those 29 kills came in just 4 sets.
Wow.
So, and Maddie Mandan of Salinas, who we talked about earlier this year, she got cleared last Tuesday, so she's played in 2 games, and she had an impact in Salinas' win over Notre Dame last Thursday. And another kid for Salinas is getting ripe at the right time. I mean, Raleigh McKinley, who's a transfer from Anzar, you're allowed to do that transfer now, but you have to sit out the first 30 days of season.
okay.
So she got cleared to play, and she had over 400 kills last year at Anzar. So all of a sudden, Salinas has McKinney and Madden coming off the bench right now as a little extra power at the net.
So does it look like a team that's really going to make a splash in the playoffs?
Well, the one thing head coach Andy Madden told me is, we don't know who we are yet because we just got these girls. We know what we're capable of, but we got to get that chemistry going. And I think Maddie's already got it with Erin Rankin, the setter. They've been together for 3 years, and I think she'll blend in right well. It's more of her being confident in that knee and being able to jump up.
Okay.
But yeah, they've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the postseason. I mean, they're on their way to the postseason. They open up with Hollister in the second half of the season. That'll be a test for them over there in Hollister. But yeah, I like Salinas right now.
Okay. Cross country, we have Santa Catalina getting upset by Salinas in a dual meet.
Pacific Grove.
Pacific Grove, I'm sorry.
NTL, Dave, NTL. No, Pacific Grove's got speaking about their football team, their cross-country team, their girls' cross-country team is exceptional right now. They're undefeated. Distance ace Michelle Watkins, who went to the state meet 2 years ago as a freshman, is kind of leading this team right now. And it was a big win for them. And they're cross-country's got 3.5 weeks to the league championship, so that's kind of like a little bit of a midterm.
Coming up, okay. And speaking of Salinas, as I misspoke, Salinas girls won the center meet recently, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't put a lot of emphasis on the center meet, but I think in this case, this was the second one for the Gablin division, and Salinas did not perform well in the first one. In fact, didn't defend their title in the Salinas City meet 2 weeks ago. So I thought for them to bounce back like this and win this meet, I think it sets a little bit of a tone for what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And North County's boys, they've won the first 2 center meets, so they're showing, hey, we're not a fluke. We're out there, we're for real. And there's not one athlete on that team you're going to sit there and say, watch this kid, but he's got 7 good runners. And as you know, in cross country, you got 7 runners that are pretty good and close in proximity. I mean, you're going to do some damage.
And I'm looking ahead again, but North County with that depth, can they make a run at the CCS championship?
Well, depending on what division they get into, and I would assume they'd be in Division 3.
Okay.
And again, it changes in the CCS. Everything changes in terms of the talent level. But At this point, yeah,
They have the depth to
I think they can
put
be a
some
top
points up
five,
on-
top
yeah.
five team. I don't know if we get the state, but
Alrighty.
The Monterey County Herald, news at your fingertips 24/7. With the Herald newspaper, website, and mobile apps, you get local, national, and international news, photos, and video. Local news written by local journalists from the largest news outlet in Monterey County. Breaking news online or directly on your mobile device, including up-to-the-minute weather. The Monterey County Herald is more than talking heads and sound bites. It's award-winning journalism at your fingertips 24/7.
Welcome back. I'm joined now by Tommy Wright, who covers CSUMB and the local community colleges for us. Tommy, community college football, finally, Coast Conference play is here. It always takes a while for us to get into conference play and get a real idea how good our teams are. Who do you think the favorite is going in?
I mean, I would probably put my money on Hartnell. They're the only team with the winning record at this point in the Coast Conference. But, of course, you never know. Like you're kind of saying, you can kind of throw out the records of the non-league schedules once you get into conference play.
Yeah, because they play that pretty crazy non-conference schedule that John wrote about where they wind up playing some of the top teams in the state, and there's no telling really how good they're going to be against teams that are more like them.
Definitely.
Hartnell opens against West Valley. Is this a winnable game for Hartnell? Is West Valley have some surprises for them, you think? Or
This should be a winnable game. I would expect Hartnell to take this game. As we talked about before, the biggest weakness for Hartnell is their run defense, and that will be tested this weekend. West Valley's 1-4, but Dre Hill, he's the second leading runner in the conference behind Hartnell's DeAndre Mann. So that should be interesting. This will be their first big test there of the Coast Conference season to see if they can shore up that run D.
meanwhile, West Valley's defense is obviously going to be focused on Mann, who's maybe one of the top running backs in the state. Does that put more pressure on the quarterback position for Hartnell?
Oh, definitely. But I was talking to Coach Matt Collins last week, and he doesn't seem too concerned about if DeAndre Mann is in there and if DeAndre Mann puts up his yards. Mann had some injury issues last year. He's a lot better this year. He's had some nicks here and there, but he should be about 100% coming into this game. But Collins didn't. He seemed to think that they can win with the pass game if they need to. And of course, if other teams want to stack the box, that's going to open things up for Kurt Straldi and Michael Turner to try and get the pass game going.
Also in the Coast Conference is MPC, which has had a tough non-conference season. They seem to have ironed some things out with their win against Reedley a couple weeks ago. Now they open against Gavlin. How do you see that game going down?
This should be a tough game for MPC. I'm interested to see how this goes. I think this, could show what's in store for the Coast Conference season for MPC. This is a young team. That's the biggest thing that I've noticed. And when I was out there talking to them, watching the game, they're still developing, and we'll see if they've developed enough in time for this Coast Conference schedule. The biggest spot is at quarterback, where Andrew Ludenbach, he's a freshman in there. He's definitely come a long way since the start of the season, but the issue there is he isn't as mobile as Cole Houston, the Lobos quarterback last year.
Okay.
And so he was getting hit a lot in the game I watched against Reedley, and so that could be an issue. One thing that I think he needs to work on is getting rid of the ball. If he sees that pressure coming, he needs to just dump it. He got sacked too many times in that game. And I won't give him all the blame for that. I think MPC needs to try and work on doing some more quick pass plays, some quick outs, some screens to try and help him get rid of that pressure a little more quickly.
Yeah. So if you're Gavlin, you're trying to pressure the guy because he's just a freshman. So we can expect a lot of blitzing, et cetera, this weekend, you think?
To some degree, I think they will keep a lot of guys back as well, though, because MPC is a team that hasn't been able to run at all. So it's not like they have to stack the box. They may be sending, if I were them, I would try and work some different blitzes to try and keep Ludenbach on his toes.
Right.
But,
or on his back.
Yeah, or on his back preferably.
Yeah.
But yeah, this should be a big test for the young quarterback.
So last week we were out at CSUMB checking out the volleyball team, which has had some good success this year. And then after we leave, we put the hex on them because they ran into a real buzzsaw. What happened there, Tom?
Yeah, they had a couple of tough games. And they did have a 5-game winning streak going, so that was snapped. But ultimately, this is also a young team, the CSUMB volleyball team, and they're still developing. It's a work in progress.
Okay. And that does it for Prep Nation this week. Make sure and check your local listings where you can watch the PG Soledad football game. This week we'll be out at King City, where we will see King City against Greenfield, and that game will be broadcast next week. Until next week, have a good one.